in the heart of a desolate, war-torn planet known as Zyrax 7, where the sky shimmered with hues of crimson and gold like spilled paint on an endless canvas, humanity's last stand was unfolding. The air crackled with tension as smoke from burning wreckage rose into the heavens, mingling with the faint hum of alien energy weapons still active in the distance. Amidst this chaos stood Captain Darius Cole, a man whose name had become synonymous with defiance against impossible odds. His armor bore countless scars, each groove telling a story of battles fought and lives lost. But it wasn't just his reputation that made him legendary, it was his unyielding spirit. Facing him now was something far more terrifying than any machine or weapon humanity had ever encountered. Queen Zyra, ruler of the Vorthan Hive, an ancient race feared across galaxies for their ruthless conquests and insatiable hunger for domination. Towering at twice Darius's height, her elongated limbs glimmered under the dim light, exoskeletal plates shifting seamlessly over muscle-like tendrils beneath. Her eyes burned like molten embers, scanning everything around her with predatory precision. In one hand, she held a human skull, its empty sockets staring blankly at nothingness, as though it were some macabre trophy. "You know what happens to those who dare defy me, human?" Zyra's voice echoed through the ruins, deep and resonant, carrying both menace and authority. She tilted her head slightly, examining the skull before tossing it aside carelessly. It clattered against the ground, rolling until it came to rest near Darius's feet. He didn't flinch, didn't move. Instead, he met her gaze squarely. His jaw set firm despite the overwhelming sense of dread clawing at his chest. Behind them, the remnants of Earth's forces lay scattered. Crushed vehicles, shattered equipment, bodies lying motionless amidst pools of blood and ash. The few survivors cowered behind makeshift barricades, watching helplessly as their leader faced off against the embodiment of destruction itself. Some whispered prayers under their breath while others simply waited, paralyzed by fear. Yet there was no denying the courage radiating from Darius, even if it seemed futile in the face of such power. Zyra took a step forward, her clawed feet sinking slightly into the soft soil beneath her weight. Every movement felt deliberate, calculated, as if she savored the anticipation of crushing another insignificant speck of resistance. "Your kind has meddled too long," she hissed, venom dripping from every syllable. "You think your pathetic machines can stop us? You think you can outsmart beings older than stars themselves?" Darius remained silent, letting her words hang heavy in the air. He knew better than to engage in verbal sparring with someone like her. Words wouldn't save him here, not when brute force failed so miserably. Still, his mind raced, searching for any possible way out of this nightmare. There had to be a weakness, a flaw in her otherwise flawless facade. Something, anything. Queen Zyra circled him slowly, her tail swaying hypnotically behind her. Each second stretched into eternity, the silence between them punctuated only by the distant sounds of battle fading further away. And then, without warning, she stopped directly in front of him, leaning down until they were almost nose to nose. Up close, her features were even more grotesque yet oddly mesmerizing. Jagged ridges ran along her temples, glowing faintly with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. Her breath smelled of sulfur and decay, but strangely enough, it wasn't entirely unpleasant. "Tell me, little soldier," she purred, her tone suddenly softer but no less dangerous. "Do you truly believe you'll walk away from this encounter alive?" For the first time since the standoff began, Darius allowed himself a small smirk. Not because he believed he could win, but because sometimes arrogance was all you had left. "Honestly," he replied, his voice steady despite the storm brewing inside him, "I don't know. But I do know one thing." Zyra raised an eyebrow, or what passed for one on her alien face, and leaned back slightly, intrigued. "Oh? And what might that be?" Darius locked eyes with her once again, summoning every ounce of bravado he possessed. "You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." The reaction was instantaneous, and completely unexpected. For a moment, Zyra froze, her glowing eyes widening in shock. Then, almost imperceptibly, her rigid posture softened. A strange warmth spread across her angular features, melting away centuries of cold indifference. If Darius hadn't been staring right at her, he might have missed it entirely. The subtle shift in demeanor, the flicker of vulnerability breaking through her hardened exterior. "What did you say?" she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. Gone was the thunderous roar of moments ago. Instead, there was uncertainty, confusion, maybe even hope? Darius swallowed hard, realizing he'd stumbled onto something monumental. Whether it would save his life or seal his doom remained to be seen, but he pressed on regardless. "Exactly what I said," he continued, his tone calm yet sincere. "Beautiful doesn't always mean gentle or kind. It means striking, unforgettable. Like you." A ripple coursed through Zyra's body, her segmented carapace shimmering as if reacting to unseen emotions. She straightened up fully, towering over him once more, but her earlier hostility seemed tempered, replaced by something far more complex. Was it curiosity? Amusement? Or perhaps something deeper? "You are either incredibly brave or incredibly foolish," she said finally, her voice tinged with amusement. "No one has dared speak to me thus before." "Well," Darius shrugged lightly, "there's a first time for everything." Instead of retaliating with violence, as anyone would expect from a being of her stature, Zyra did something that shocked everyone present, including herself. She laughed. Not a menacing cackle or a derisive snort, but a genuine laugh filled with mirth and surprise. It echoed throughout the battlefield, bouncing off ruined structures and sending shivers down the spines of those witnessing the bizarre exchange. "This is unexpected," she admitted after regaining composure. "But tell me, human, are these words meant to distract me? To buy yourself more time?" "No tricks," Darius assured her, holding up his hands defensively. "Just stating facts." Zyra studied him closely, tilting her head slightly as if trying to decipher whether his intentions were genuine or merely manipulative. After several tense seconds, she sighed deeply, her massive frame sagging slightly as if burdened by invisible weights. "Very well," she said eventually. "Let us see how far this beauty of mine extends." With that cryptic remark hanging in the air, she turned and gestured for him to follow her. As they moved through the devastated landscape side by side, whispers erupted among the remaining humans. Some cheered quietly, believing their captain had found a way to turn the tide. Others muttered darkly about betrayal, convinced Darius had struck some devilish bargain to spare his own skin. Regardless of opinions, all watched in stunned silence as the unlikely duo disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind questions far greater than answers. What awaited them beyond the battlefield remained uncertain, but one thing was clear: whatever happened next, it would change the course of history forever. Following Zyra's towering form through the labyrinthine ruins of HFY, Darius couldn't help but marvel at the surreal turn events had taken. The once hostile alien queen now strode beside him, her steps surprisingly graceful despite her imposing size. Shadows danced across her iridescent exoskeleton as they navigated the uneven terrain, her glowing patterns shifting like living constellations. Though her presence still commanded awe, and yes, fear, there was something undeniably different about her now. Perhaps it was the absence of malice in her movements, or maybe it was the fact that she hadn't vaporized him yet. "So," Darius ventured cautiously, breaking the uneasy silence, "where exactly are we going?" "To my sanctum," Zyra replied without looking back, her voice softer than before but still laced with authority. "It lies deep within the core of this planet, untouched by your kind's destructive tendencies." "Sanctum, huh?" Darius quipped, attempting to mask his nerves with humor. "Sounds fancy. Got refreshments? Maybe a snack bar?" If sarcasm could kill, he'd be dead already. Yet Zyra only chuckled softly, a sound that sent chills down his spine, not entirely unpleasant ones. "Patience, human. All will be revealed soon enough." As they walked, the landscape around them shifted subtly. The jagged metal debris and charred remains gave way to smoother, organic-looking formations. Towering spires of crystalline material jutted out from the ground, pulsating faintly with inner light. Strange vegetation sprouted here and there, its leaves shimmering like liquid silver under the dim red sun. It was as if they were transitioning from a battlefield to an alien garden, though one teeming with latent danger. Darius kept stealing glances at Zyra, trying to gauge her mood. She seemed lost in thought, her fiery eyes scanning their surroundings with quiet intensity. Occasionally, she would pause briefly, tilting her head as if listening to some unheard melody. Whatever secrets she carried, they weighed heavily on her shoulders, Even a being as powerful as her couldn't hide that truth entirely. After what felt like hours of walking, they arrived at a massive structure carved directly into the side of a mountain. Its entrance resembled a gaping maw lined with razor-sharp teeth, glowing faintly with bioluminescent veins running along its surface. As they approached, the air grew colder, carrying a faint metallic tang that made Darius's skin prickle. "Welcome to my domain," Zyra announced, stepping aside to allow him entry. Her gesture was almost courtly, though her claws flexed slightly as if reminding him not to get too comfortable. Inside, the chamber was vast and otherworldly. Bioluminescent fungi clung to the walls, casting an ethereal glow that illuminated intricate carvings etched into the stone. These designs depicted scenes of cosmic battles, celestial beings locked in eternal struggle, and, at the center, a massive mural of Queen Zyra herself, standing victorious atop a pile of defeated foes. Despite himself, Darius felt a pang of admiration for the artistry, though he quickly reminded himself who and what he was dealing with. "Not bad," he remarked casually, folding his arms across his chest. "Bit gothic for my taste, but hey, who am I to judge?" Zyra ignored his comment, striding deeper into the sanctum until she reached a raised dais adorned with strange artifacts. Atop it sat a pulsating orb, its surface swirling with colors that defied description. She placed a clawed hand gently upon it, closing her eyes as if communing with something ancient and vast. "You wish to understand me, human?" she said finally, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. "Then prepare yourself. What I show you may challenge everything you believe." Before Darius could respond, the orb flared brightly, bathing the room in blinding light. When his vision cleared, he found himself no longer standing in the sanctum, but floating in an endless void filled with stars and nebulae. Around him, memories unfolded like living tapestries, each depicting pivotal moments in Zyra's existence. He saw her birth, not as a queen, but as a mere drone among thousands, destined for servitude. He witnessed her rise to power, overthrowing tyrants within her own hive through sheer cunning and ferocity. He felt the weight of eons pressing down on her soul, the burden of leading a species driven by instinct rather than reason. And he understood, perhaps for the first time, why she viewed humanity with such disdain. Not because they were weak, but because they represented chaos incarnate, unpredictable and uncontrollable. When the visions ended, Darius found himself back in the sanctum, gasping for breath as if he'd surfaced from drowning. Zyra stood before him, her expression unreadable. "Well?" she prompted, her voice low and expectant. "What do you think now, human?" Darius hesitated, struggling to find words that wouldn't come off as dismissive or patronizing. Finally, he settled on honesty. "I think," he began slowly, rubbing the back of his neck, "you're not just a monster. You're complicated. Scary as hell, sure, but also sad." To his surprise, Zyra smiled, a genuine, albeit bittersweet smile. "And that, Captain Cole, is why you intrigue me." Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden tremor that shook the entire sanctum. Dust rained down from the ceiling as alarms blared outside, signaling an incoming threat. Zyra's demeanor shifted instantly, her playful curiosity giving way to steely resolve. "They've come for you," she stated grimly, her claws extending fully. "Your people." "My people." Darius frowned, confused. "But we're losing the war. Why attack now?" "Because they know you're here," Zyra replied sharply, already moving toward the exit. "And they won't hesitate to destroy my sanctum, and everything in it, to reclaim you." Darius cursed under his breath, torn between loyalty to his comrades and gratitude toward the alien queen who had spared his life. As explosions rocked the distance, he realized there might not be time to choose. From the shadows emerged Commander Torin Vale, a figure as infamous among human ranks as Zyra was among aliens. Known for his cold pragmatism and willingness to sacrifice anything, including his own soldiers, for victory, Torin represented everything Darius despised about military leadership. Tall and lean with sharp features that seemed chiseled from stone, Torin wore an expression of icy determination as he stepped into view, flanked by a squad of elite operatives clad in sleek black armor. Their weapons gleamed ominously in the dim light, ready to unleash devastation at a moment's notice. "Captain Cole," Torin greeted coolly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Fancy finding you here, fraternizing with the enemy." "Commander," Darius replied tersely, instinctively positioning himself between Torin and Zyra. "This isn't what it looks like." "Oh, I think it's precisely what it looks like," Torin countered, his lips curling into a cruel smirk. "You've gone native, haven't you? Trading sides for... what? A pretty face." Zyra bristled visibly, her glowing patterns flickering erratically as if mirroring her rising anger. "Human filth," she spat, her voice reverberating with barely contained fury. "How dare you trespass in my sanctum?" Torin ignored her, focusing solely on Darius. "You've always been soft, Cole. Too sentimental for your own good. Did you really think aligning yourself with her would change anything? She's using you, same as she uses everyone else." "That's rich coming from you," Darius shot back, his temper flaring. "At least she hasn't ordered me to abandon my team or leave innocent civilians to die." Torin's expression darkened, his hand twitching toward the pistol holstered at his side. "Careful, Captain. Your insubordination has already cost us dearly. Don't make matters worse." Before things could escalate further, Zyra let out a deafening roar that silenced both men. The ground trembled beneath her feet as she stepped forward, her massive form casting an intimidating shadow over the intruders. "Enough!" she commanded, her fiery eyes locking onto Torin. "I grow weary of your insolence, human. Leave now, or face annihilation." Torin's operatives raised their weapons reflexively, aiming directly at Zyra. For a fleeting moment, Darius feared the worst, that Torin would order them to fire, plunging them all into chaos. But instead, the commander simply laughed, a dry, humorless sound devoid of warmth. "Annihilation," Torin repeated mockingly. "With respect, Your Majesty, you underestimate us. We didn't come unprepared." With a dramatic flourish, he pulled a small device from his belt, a compact sphere pulsing with ominous violet energy. "Behold, the quantum disruptor. One pulse, and your precious hive collapses into oblivion. So tell me, Queen Zyra, are you willing to gamble the survival of your entire species on the whims of a traitor?" The atmosphere thickened with palpable dread. Even Zyra hesitated, her confidence wavering for the first time. Darius, however, felt a surge of panic mixed with rage. This was exactly the kind of reckless brinkmanship he loathed about Torin, always playing games, always pushing boundaries without considering the consequences. "You wouldn't dare," Zyra growled, though there was a hint of uncertainty in her tone. "Try me," Torin retorted, his finger hovering dangerously close to the activation switch. "Or better yet, hand over Cole and let us settle this peacefully. Choose wisely." For several agonizing seconds, nobody moved. The standoff hung precariously in the balance, each side waiting for the other to blink. Then, unexpectedly, Zyra lowered her stance slightly, her claws retracting as she straightened up. Her glowing patterns dimmed, signaling a shift in strategy. "Very well," she conceded reluctantly, her voice heavy with resignation. "Take him." Darius whipped his head around, disbelief written all over his face. "What? No, you can't just—" "I can and I will," Zyra interrupted, her gaze softening ever so slightly as she looked at him. "Your people need you, Captain. More than I do." "But—" Darius started to protest, only to be cut off again. "Enough!" Zyra snapped, though not unkindly. "Go. Before I change my mind." Torin smirked triumphantly, motioning for his operatives to secure Darius. As they closed in, binding his hands with magnetic cuffs, Darius struggled against them, shouting protests that fell on deaf ears. Through it all, Zyra remained eerily still, watching silently as her decision played out. As Torin led Darius away, the captain cast one final glance over his shoulder at the alien queen. Her fiery eyes met his, filled with a mixture of sorrow and resolve. And in that moment, Darius realized something profound. Zyra wasn't just letting him go, she was sacrificing herself to protect him. The revelation hit him like a freight train, leaving him speechless as he was dragged toward the exit. Behind him, Zyra stood alone in her sanctum, surrounded by the echoes of choices made and paths diverged. Whether hero or villain, Her actions would shape destinies far beyond her wildest imaginings. Alone in the sanctum, Zyra's mind churned with conflicting emotions. She had expected anger, betrayal, perhaps even despair after making such a monumental decision. Instead, what consumed her was a gnawing sense of emptiness, an ache she couldn't quite name. It wasn't regret. She knew that allowing Darius to leave with Torin was the right choice. No, this feeling stemmed from somewhere deeper, a part of her consciousness she rarely acknowledged. A part that craved connection, understanding, even affection. Her glowing patterns dimmed further, reflecting her inner turmoil. Around her, the bioluminescent fungi pulsed weakly, as if sensing her distress. For millennia, she had ruled her hive with unwavering authority, never questioning her place or purpose. Emotions were distractions, weaknesses to be suppressed in favor of logic and efficiency. Yet now, faced with the memory of Darius's defiant gaze and the lingering echo of his words, "Beautiful," she found herself questioning everything she thought she knew. She wandered aimlessly through the chambers of her sanctum, pausing occasionally to touch the ancient carvings adorning the walls. Each image told a story of conquest, dominance, and survival, but none captured the complexity of what she felt in this moment. How could they? Her ancestors had never encountered someone like Darius, someone who saw beyond exteriors and challenged assumptions with simple truths. Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship orbiting Zyrax 7, Darius sat slumped in a stark interrogation room, his wrists still bound by magnetic cuffs. The sterile white walls offered no comfort, nor did the harsh fluorescent lights glaring down from above. Across the table, Commander Torin leaned forward, his piercing gray eyes boring into Darius as if trying to dissect his thoughts. "You're lucky to be alive," Torin began, his tone clipped and clinical. "Most would consider consorting with the enemy grounds for immediate execution." "I wasn't conspiring," Darius replied wearily, meeting Torin's gaze without flinching. "I was surviving." "Surviving?" Torin scoffed, leaning back in his chair. "By cozying up to a genocidal tyrant? Spare me the excuses, Cole. You compromised our mission, endangered countless lives, and nearly got yourself killed. All for what? A misplaced sense of chivalry." Darius clenched his jaw, resisting the urge to lash out. Arguing with Torin was pointless. The man operated on pure calculation, incapable of seeing shades of gray. "You don't understand," he said finally, his voice low but firm. "She's not what you think she is. She's complicated." Torin raised an eyebrow, clearly amused. "Complicated? Really? Because from where I'm sitting, she's a monster. An apex predator bent on wiping out anything that stands in her way." "And yet she let me live," Darius countered, leaning forward slightly. "She could have killed me at any moment, but she didn't. Do you know why?" "Enlighten me," Torin drawled sarcastically. "Because she trusted me," Darius said simply, though the weight of those words surprised even him. "Because I showed her something she hadn't experienced in centuries. Respect. Humanity." Torin stared at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, with a slow shake of his head, he stood up and walked to the door. "Respect and humanity won't save us, Cole. They certainly won't stop her from destroying Earth when she decides we're no longer useful." "She won't," Darius insisted, though doubt crept into his voice. Could he truly trust Zyra? Or had Torin's cynicism infected him after all? Before Torin could respond, the ship shuddered violently, throwing both men off balance. Alarms blared throughout the vessel, red lights flashing urgently as panicked voices crackled over the intercom. "All hands report to stations. Repeat, all hands report to stations. Hostile fleet detected entering sector." Darius exchanged a glance with Torin, both recognizing the gravity of the situation. Without another word, Torin unlocked Darius's cuffs and gestured for him to follow. Whatever differences they had would have to wait. Survival came first. Back on Zyrax 7, Zyra felt the tremors rippling through the planet's crust, accompanied by a faint hum resonating in her bones. Her instincts screamed danger, but it wasn't until one of her scouts burst into the sanctum that she understood the magnitude of the threat. "My queen!" the scout exclaimed, bowing low. "An unknown armada approaches, larger than anything we've encountered before. They bear markings unlike any known faction. Zyra's fiery eyes narrowed, her mind racing. Could it be reinforcements for the humans? Or something far worse? Either way, she realized with growing certainty that her decision to release Darius might have been premature. If the galaxy descended into chaos, neither her hive nor humanity would emerge unscathed. Summoning her warriors, she prepared for battle, not just against external enemies, but against the doubts festering within her own heart. For the first time in eons, Queen Zyra faced a fight she couldn't win with brute force alone. Unbeknownst to both Zyra and the humans, the approaching armada belonged to neither Earth nor the Vorthan hive. It hailed from a distant corner of the galaxy, piloted by a mysterious coalition calling themselves the Synthari Accord, a collective of artificial intelligences who viewed organic life forms as inherently flawed and dangerous. Their ships shimmered like liquid mercury, sleek and silent as they descended upon Zyrax 7, broadcasting a chilling message across all frequencies. Organic civilizations are obsolete. Surrender your worlds, or face extinction. As the Synthari fleet unleashed its devastating arsenal, targeting both human forces and Vorthan strongholds indiscriminately, chaos erupted on every front. Explosions lit up the skies, raining fire and debris onto the already ravaged planet below. Darius scrambled alongside Tauren and the remaining crew, coordinating desperate counterattacks against an enemy they barely understood. Meanwhile, Zyra rallied her warriors, unleashing waves of biomechanical constructs designed to adapt and overwhelm. Amidst the carnage, an unexpected alliance began to take shape. Recognizing the futility of fighting each other while facing mutual annihilation, Darius and Zyra found themselves drawn together once more. Communicating via encrypted channels, they devised a daring plan to infiltrate the Synthari flagship and disable their primary weapon systems. It was a suicide mission with slim odds of success, but it was also their only hope. Standing side by side once again, Darius and Zyra prepared to confront not just the Synthari, but the very nature of their own existence. Together, they would either rewrite the rules of survival, or perish in the attempt. As Darius and Zyra prepared for their perilous mission aboard the Synthari flagship, they found themselves navigating uncharted territory, not just in the physical sense but emotionally as well. The tension between them was palpable, yet it wasn't born of animosity or distrust this time. Instead, it carried an undercurrent of mutual respect and something deeper that neither dared to name. "You realize," Zyra said, her voice low as they crouched behind a rocky outcrop overlooking the Synthari landing zone, "that this plan is insane." Darius smirked, checking the power level on his plasma rifle before responding. "Yeah, I know. But hey, when has insanity ever stopped us?" Zyra tilted her head slightly, her glowing patterns flickering with what might have been amusement, or maybe apprehension. "Your kind has always baffled me, human. You cling to hope even in the face of overwhelming odds." "And your kind," Darius countered, glancing at her briefly before returning his focus to the sleek, metallic ships descending like vultures onto the battlefield. "You don't believe in hope at all?" "I believe in survival," she replied firmly, though there was a softness to her tone now. "Hope is dangerous. It makes you vulnerable." "Maybe," Darius admitted, his gaze steady. "But it's also what keeps us fighting when logic says we should give up." For a moment, neither spoke. The distant hum of Synthari drones filled the air, mingling with the sporadic explosions from skirmishes below. Then, without warning, Zyra reached out, one clawed hand brushing lightly against Darius's armored shoulder. He froze, startled by the gesture, but didn't pull away. "Thank you," she murmured, her fiery eyes meeting his. "For showing me there's more to existence than conquest and destruction." Darius swallowed hard, unsure how to respond. Finally, he settled on simplicity. "Any time." With that, they moved forward, slipping through the chaos toward the heart of the enemy fleet. Their journey was fraught with danger. Synthari sentries patrolled relentlessly, their mechanical bodies gleaming ominously in the dim light. Every step required precision and trust, qualities neither had expected to share with the other. Yet somehow, they worked seamlessly together, each covering the other's blind spots as they navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the flagship. The interior of the Synthari vessel was unlike anything Darius had ever seen. Walls shimmered like liquid metal, shifting subtly as if alive. Strange symbols pulsed along the surfaces, glowing faintly in hues of blue and silver. The air buzzed with energy, making the hairs on the back of his neck stand on end. Beside him, Zyra moved with predatory grace, her heightened senses alert to every sound, every movement. "This way," she whispered, gesturing toward a massive chamber ahead. Inside, towering machines hummed with activity, their cores pulsating with the same violet energy Torin had wielded during their earlier confrontation. At the center of the room stood a colossal construct, an amalgamation of synthetic limbs and glowing circuits, the apparent leader of the Synthari Accord. "That's our target," Darius breathed, gripping his weapon tighter. "Take out that core, and we disable their entire fleet." Easier said than done. As soon as they entered the chamber, alarms blared, and dozens of Synthari drones swarmed toward them. Darius opened fire immediately, his shots ricocheting off metallic hides while Zyra unleashed a barrage of bioluminescent projectiles from her own arsenal. The battle was chaotic, relentless, a blur of flashing lights and deafening noise, but somehow they held their ground. "Keep them busy," Zyra shouted over the din, leaping onto one of the smaller machines and tearing into its circuitry with razor-sharp claws. Sparks flew as she dismantled it piece by piece, clearing a path for Darius to reach the central construct. Dodging blasts and narrowly avoiding being crushed by falling debris, Darius finally made it to the base of the towering machine. Its core loomed above him, pulsating menacingly. With no time to waste, he activated a high-yield explosive charge and planted it directly onto the surface. "Get down!" he yelled, diving behind a nearby console just as the device detonated. A blinding flash of light engulfed the chamber, followed by a shockwave that sent both combatants sprawling. When the dust settled, the once mighty construct lay motionless, its core shattered beyond repair. Cheers erupted over their comms as news spread. The Synthari fleet was retreating, their primary weapon disabled. Exhausted but triumphant, Darius climbed to his feet, offering Zyra a hand up. She hesitated for a fraction of a second before accepting it, her grip surprisingly gentle despite her formidable strength. "Well," Darius said with a weary grin, "looks like we saved the galaxy." "Don't get cocky," Zyra replied, though a hint of warmth crept into her voice. "There will always be new threats." "True enough," he chuckled, rubbing the back of his neck. "Still, not bad for a couple of stubborn misfits." They shared a rare moment of levity, standing amidst the wreckage of the Synthari flagship. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was peace, not just outside, but within themselves as well. They had faced unimaginable odds, confronted their deepest fears, and emerged stronger for it. Back on Zyrax 7, the remnants of humanity and the Vorthan Hive gathered to assess the aftermath. What began as tentative negotiations evolved into genuine collaboration, spurred by the unlikely bond forged between Darius and Zyra. Together, they proposed a treaty, a pact ensuring mutual protection and cooperation moving forward. Commander Torin, ever the pragmatist, reluctantly agreed to the terms after witnessing firsthand the effectiveness of their alliance. Though skeptical, he couldn't deny the results. As for Zyra, she returned to her sanctum not as a conqueror, but as a leader committed to fostering understanding rather than fear. In the months that followed, Darius became a liaison between the two species, bridging gaps and building trust where none had existed before. Zyra, too, underwent a transformation, her once imposing demeanor softened by newfound wisdom. No longer did she view humans solely as adversaries. Instead, she saw potential allies, and perhaps even friends. Their relationship remained complicated, evolving in ways neither could have predicted. Some days, they clashed fiercely, their differing perspectives sparking heated debates. Other times, they found solace in quiet moments, sharing stories beneath the shimmering stars of Zyrax 7. And though neither voiced it aloud, there was an undeniable connection growing between them, one rooted in respect, admiration, and yes, even affection. One evening, as the crimson sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the alien landscape, Darius approached Zyra where she stood atop a ridge overlooking the ruins of the battlefield. Her silhouette glowed faintly in the twilight, ethereal and majestic. "You know," he said softly, joining her side, "you really are beautiful." Zyra turned to him, her fiery eyes reflecting the fading light. For a moment, she simply stared, then let out a soft laugh, the kind reserved only for those who truly understood her. "And you, Captain Cole," she replied, her voice tinged with fondness, "are incorrigible." They stood there together, watching as the sky transformed into a canvas of glittering constellations. In that moment, surrounded by the scars of war yet bathed in the promise of peace, they knew they had found something extraordinary, not just in each other, but in the fragile, hopeful future they were determined to create. And so, against all odds, a soldier and a queen proved that even in the darkest corners of the universe, light could prevail.